Hi, everyone. It's Brandon Miller here. I'm really excited today because we're going to be doing a topic that is near and dear to me, which is, basically how to immigrate to Canada and where to start. So, if you've been with us for a little while, we run these master classes, and the master classes are on a number of different themes, and they basically we focus in on different programs and give a bit of an overview. Well, at the same time, we're trying to focus in on a little bit more of the aspects to allow people to be a little bit more successful. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through I want to immigrate to Canada. Where do I start? The reason that I'm excited about this is because the information that I'm going to present today is all about where people go wrong. And there's a lot of people that will come to me and they'll come with like these massive problems. And the reason that they have the problems is because they haven't planned ahead. So I've been doing this for almost 10 years in immigration. And what I've seen is that everybody can immigrate to Canada if they have meet the criteria. I know that sounds really funny. Everybody can immigrate if they can meet the criteria. However, where people tend to go wrong is because they haven't planned and they don't have a backup plan and they don't see what their end goal is and they just kind of take it step by step. Okay. So we're going to dive into that today. So I want to immigrate to Canada. Where do I start? As of the current time, this is June 5th, 2020. We're still in the middle of COVID, as you can see with the hair and everything. But I think that the way that I've prepared these slides is that I want them to be timeless. So I want you to have, I think that the strategies that we're talking about here, I've prepared this on purpose to be very strategy specific, that are the strategies that no matter where it is, it'll always be. Okay, so let's get started. So my overview for today, I'm going to talk about preparation and research. I'm going to talk about the importance of a consultation. Before you're like, oh yeah, here's Brandon just trying to sell me on a consultation. I want you to really understand why this is important and why hunting around the internet for information is not a good idea and not a good way to go. If you know me and have you watched some of my stuff, you'll know that I always talk about strategic planning. Strategic planning is why people are successful, because they have a plan. They will take that plan and they will follow it through. And then what will happen is once they follow it through, they'll be able to execute or implement, and then they'll get to their goal. And this is the same with anything in life. And you'll hear me say that 1,000 times, but I'm going to say it 1,000 more times, because really, everybody can do this. You just need a pathway, you need a guide, and you need to be able to get to your end goal, and you need to know what that looks like when you get there. Meeting target goals and deadlines. So I'm going to talk about why this is important and what deadlines and targets you should be aware of, because again, this is where, sometimes things can fall apart if you're not familiar with some of that stuff. Okay. Backup and alternate plans. Every plan that I put together for a client, I always have, well, if this happens or this trend that we're seeing changes, we work to make sure that we have different layers of a plan put together. And I think that that's really, really important. A lot of people will come to me and they'll just have, oh, here's my plan. And then when something goes off, they don't know what their backup is. Okay. So we're going to dive into some detail on all of this stuff, and hopefully this will be great for you. All right. So preparation and research. A lot of people, when they want to immigrate to Canada, they go to the immigration website and they start doing their research there. I'm going to tell you not to do that. I'm actually going to tell you to go before that, and I'm going to actually tell you to research with yourself. I want you to ask yourself the hard questions, right? What are your objectives and motivations for coming to Canada? Like, why do you want to come here? Okay. Research Canada. Look at what Canada has to offer. Understand where you want to be in Canada. Understand why you want to come here. And then you need to ask yourself if you're truly ready to come here and ready to start the journey, because this is a journey. It's not just, well, I'll just file the application and show up and see what happens. Some people do this and that they're okay with it. I know that on certain things, I like to fly by the seat of my pants. But again, what I want you to do is if you truly want to prepare and you truly want to be successful, I want you to research Canada. Okay. I want you to understand how many provinces there are, what types of cities there are. Maybe if you're in the oil industry, for instance, maybe going to Manitoba wouldn't be a good thing, but maybe Alberta would be a better choice. Understand where your industries are, and then you can start to say, okay, I understand where I want to go and what I want to do. Now, how do I get there? Okay. And that's where we come in usually. I like to see when we're working with people that they're engaged in the process. I like to see that they have a bit of an idea. It's not like, yeah, my friend went to Canada, so I want to come to Canada. Okay. Which is fine, right? Maybe you want to do that, and maybe it's something that you've always wanted to do. There's no right or wrong answer here, but what I'm asking you to do is look at yourself a little bit and say, what do I want to do? There's nothing more disheartening to me than somebody who's come here and they haven't been able to utilize their skills. Okay. This is a reality. I see it all the time. And really it boils down to planning and expectation. Okay. You need to be realistic, and you need to get the guidance to be able to understand that stuff. Okay. So again, the last thing is are you truly ready? So coming here from different places in the world, it could be something as little as, the weather. You might be coming from a very hot place, and, maybe showing up in a snowstorm in January might not be the best time for you to come. Maybe there's other places. So there's a real difference in temperature between Nunavut and Ontario. So you might want to look at these things a little bit harder and understand this prior to starting out. Okay, awesome. So, importance of a consultation. The reason I'm so excited about this is because a lot of people will contact us and they will say, I just have a question. I'm like, okay. A lot of people have questions, but the questions might seem simple, but when I listen to the question, it's not so simple. It's actually can get very complicated very quickly. And depending on the different scenarios that you have, we might need to delve deeper into that. And that's not just I'm just going to respond back and let you know about that. So I would suggest that once you have made a decision to come to Canada, or if you're here in Canada, you need to understand all of your different steps. And I'm going to talk about that in the strategic planning. But you need to get advice that's tailored to you. Okay. One of the biggest things that I really don't like to hear is like, oh, I was on the internet and I read this, right? Or, oh, this worked for this guy on the internet, or my friend did this, right? Oh man, everybody's situation is different. And again, if you look at my logo, it says trust, expertise, and personalized service. The personalized service is really important because you can't just grab somebody else's situation and put it into your own. Okay. You need to actually understand everything, your case and how it relates to the immigration system. The other thing is that people don't identify possible problems or issues that they might be having. And you really might want to identify those prior to launching any application that you might have. One of the common issues that I see, and I've been seeing a lot lately, is depending on where people come from, their family member might have what would be deemed a criminal inadmissibility issue. And there were some changes in the law a little while back, over a year ago, where it redefined what serious criminality was. And a lot of people don't know this until they think, oh yeah, it's just a little thing. Well, that little thing could bar you from coming to Canada. So just as an example, because there's a litany of other things that you could look at, but that's one of the things that we see a lot, and it puts the brakes on very quickly. So you want to identify those, and before you start having the embassy ask you questions or the IRCC ask you questions, you want to actually be prepared and know how to deal with those and take a proactive approach to that so that it doesn't become a bigger issue. You want to know your immigration pathways and the options that are available to you. Again, this sounds very basic, but a lot of people will contact us and they'll say, oh, I'm qualified for this and I want to apply for this. And it's like, slow down, right? Slow down, because what we do is we look for the easiest, quickest, and most cost-effective way through the system. Okay. And there might be other ways, you gotta, there's 80, 90 different pathways, like programs and pathways and variations on those programs where people can actually go through the system. And, I talked to a lady last week, and she was looking at an economic pathway. And she was in a relationship with somebody that she didn't understand was a common law relationship, for instance. And the reason I bring that up is because I was like, well, you could mount this case, which is a lot more complicated for you, or you could go this way, which is a lot easier for you and would be a lot cheaper, and you wouldn't have to do X, Y, Z. So why don't we just discuss that? So these are the things that you can uncover. It can save you a lot of time. It can save you a lot of money. It can save you a lot of frustration, et cetera, et cetera. The last thing is that the goal is after you get out of this, that you have a plan. And most importantly, having a plan is great, but you need to be able to execute and implement that plan. Because if you can't, it just looks really good on paper, but it has no meaning to you. So we're always pretty realistic with that. So what we do is that, and I'm just using us as an example, we'll look at the individual, we'll gather their information, then we'll look at how that relates to the immigration laws and everything that's there. And then what we'll do is on top of that, we will put together, here's your options. Maybe there's 1, 2, or 3 options. Maybe there's one option. And then we'll say, this is what we suggest you do. And we suggest that you do it within this time frame because these are the factors, and I'm going to talk about that as well, that might, create an issue for you. And then we're going to identify the problems and say, here's some of the issues that you might want to do, and here's some of the ways around it. And then they have a backup and they have a plan that they can execute on. And that's really important, super, super important. Okay, so that's the goal of the consultation. And that's why it's important, because you need to know what you're doing. You don't want to get through something, file this application, find out it doesn't work. Oh, well, my buddy did this, so maybe I'll try that application. It doesn't work that way. And it actually, depending on the programs that you're applying for, could actually work to your detriment. Okay, awesome. Let's move on. Strategic planning. Okay, here we go. This is what I love. So how I've always approached immigration, my clients, and basically everything that I do is I look at my end goal and I want to see where I want to be. And then I say, okay, this is what I want. And then I come backwards and I figure out what all the steps are to get there. Okay. I do this in my business. I do this in my, my personal life. And I definitely do it with my clients. I say to them right off the bat, what's your goal? So once we understand what the end goal is, that's one of the first questions out of my mouth. I'm like, okay, so how do we get there? When we put together a plan, we say, here's the end goal. And then we look at, what are the milestones to get there? So if it's permanent residency and somebody wants to come as a student, for instance. So we'll say, okay, here's the student, right? And this is actually a big thing that we're seeing a lot. There's a lot of students that are coming here and they arrive and they have zero plan. We talked to somebody last week that was already qualified for express entry. She would have already had an invitation and done that. And she was looking totally at a different program because that's what she understood. And I was like, yeah, you're qualified now and you could probably have your PR wrapped up and finished by the time you even just get started on your other pathway that you're planning. So again, students will come, they generally may or may not have a pathway, and they're just kind of going step by step. So it's like, okay, I'll go to school. Yay, I'm in Canada. Okay, now I'll get my postgrad, and then I'll get my job, and then I'll get my PR. Okay, that's all great, but it's like when, and you'll see I have a timeline for the process with expected milestones. When should I be executing on that so that I can hit that milestone? It's very important, and especially when you don't have a lot of time, and the postgrad is actually very limited in terms of when you're going to be able to, the validity of it. Okay. Understand different strategies to maximize success. So let me give you an example. A strategy in express entry, is maybe leaving a spouse as a non-accompanying because they're dragging down the points. Okay. That could be the difference of you coming to Canada and not coming to Canada, right? Because your points would be able to go up. Coupled with that, you need to be able to watch the trends and understand what's going on. right now, as we're looking at COVID and what's going on here, we've seen them stop doing the FSW draws and the FSTPs. And what they're doing is the PMPs, the provincial nominees, and the Canadian experience class. And they're clearing out a lot of people that are in Canada already. Why is this important? Well, I'll tell you, I just had a client that had an English test scheduled for August because he needed to up his English scores. And guess what? He just got an invite because the scores had dropped so dramatically for him. So you need to understand, and he's very on it, and I don't know if he's watching or not, but he knows who he is. He's really on top of it. He watches the stuff, as do most of my clients, because we always have engaged people working with us that are mutually invested in their own future. But what's interesting is that those trends, actually, you need to be able to understand and interpret what those are so that you know how that impacts you and where things are going. I did a consult yesterday with somebody else, and I basically told her, I said, don't worry about your husband doing all this stuff, because if the trend continues, then you're going to be fine. However, I also said, we'll see in August where things sit, and if the trends don't continue, then here's our backup plan, and here's what we're going to do. Okay, so that's why the backup plan is supplemental to the main plan, because it's a fluid system, right? You need to know what your goal is, and you need to know how to get there. And it's never a straight line. You got to zigzag through there. But then you're going to have to figure, okay, well, what strategy can I use to be able to get there? Sometimes coming as a student's a strategy. Sometimes leaving a spouse off an application is a strategy. Sometimes, getting a particular job that will set you up in, say, a year's time for an LMIA might be a strategy. There's so many different things that could happen, but these things have to be in there. The timeline for the process, we've already spoken about, but the timeline's important. And I think I'm going to touch on that a little bit in more detail, but it has to do with points. If you're coming under an economic program, it has to do with validity of documents, maybe getting a document that might be stale, things like that. The trends, we've already touched on that with COVID. And backup plans. And again, this is key. This is what I like to see with everybody. Okay. Meeting target goals and deadlines. Meeting minimum scores and qualifications. So that's pretty obvious in terms of a program, but English test scores and credentials. So it's better to understand what those are first and where you sit prior to actually just going down the pathway of like, I want to go to Canada. So you need to know that. But you also need to know deadlines, cutoff periods. Again, if age is a big factor for you and it's going to make the difference in getting the points, you're going to want to watch that. You're going to want to do planning a couple years out in advance. Say you're coming as a student, right? What I do when I'm planning and I run the different scenarios with my clients, say they're coming as a student, I'll say, okay, you're coming as a student. This is what your situation looks like now. And then in a couple years, this is what it's going to look like. And then this is what it's going to look like if you're able to get this work experience within this time. Okay. So again, but knowing what those deadlines are, because say you're 28 and then you become 29, and then you've got 2 years of school, and then you've got another year of work, right? So what's going to happen? Your age is going to drop, but your age is going to drop. Say your age goes down 5 points, but your work experience could go up 40. So you have to weigh all these things out and understand what those are, but you also have to understand the impact of the deadlines and the cutoff periods. Gathering required documents and information. This can take on so many different forms, and you want to make sure that you understand what the rules are for the documentation that they require, i.e. IRCC, but at the same time, you also want to make sure that your documents are going to remain valid. They're going to be accepted. So for instance, police checks are a really good example of this. So if you're traveling a lot, for instance, or if, employment letters, for instance. So say you're in a current job right now and you ask your boss, hey, can you sign this letter? Can you do this for me? Okay, yeah, sure, I'll do that. But then your boss is a busy person and he or she is going to come back and you're going to say, hey, I kind of need more experience on this letter. Can you sign this for me? Well, I already signed that for you. Why am I signing it again? Like, not really, you don't really want to do that. You want to understand when you need it, how to gather the documents, what type of documents you might need, and if there's a deficiency in the documents, because we don't live in a perfect world, what or how can I make up that deficiency? Okay, and then eventually planning ahead. One of the things that I used to teach the immigration course, and one of the things that I always used to say to the new consultants coming out of the course, trying to make their way in the world, is always plan your case to fail. And that's not me. That's not my, I'm not some, I figured that one out on myself. That was taught to me. And the reason is that you have to look at, say, okay, well, what if I get refused? What's that going to look like? So one option would be is going to federal court and seeking a judicial review or relief under that. But, what's that going to look like when I get there? So one of the things, the litmus test that I always do when I'm preparing a file is I look at, what is this going to look like in front of the government officer? Does this look a little strange? Is this a little too perfect? Is this whatever? So what are they going to look at it? And then my next test is I say, what's a judge going to look? If I lose and I get refused, right? For instance, which, knock on wood, we don't get too many of those. And if that's going to be the case, what's that going to look like? What's it going to look like? What is the judge going to do if I've got an error in fact or an error in law here? What's that going to look like, right? What's reasonable? Okay, so we always prepare our cases so that, if somebody else had to look at it and give us an opinion on it, we want to be able to stand by our work. Okay, so I'm going to move on from that. Backup and alternate plans. What do we do when things don't go as planned? So I've alluded to COVID because we're in the middle of it right now. And I'll tell you what, there was a lot of things that didn't go as planned for a lot of people right now, right? A lot of people are still living it, and the alternate solutions and options, I don't think anybody could have planned for this. I think that, going forward, one of the things that we've looked at is how are we going to plan for this for our clients? If, for instance, they get a post-grad work permit and it's only for a little amount of time, and then they get laid off because everyone's in lockdown and they don't have enough time. There's advantages that we've seen in terms of the immigration law and being able to use that to be able to still meet the objectives, but these are all backup and alternate plans. So what do you do when things don't go as planned? It's best to plan for those initially before you actually get into the situation. Okay, there's nothing worse than saying, oh gosh, I wish I did that, or I wish I knew that, right? You should know all of these in the beginning, and then you have different layers, which are, okay, if this doesn't work, then I go this way, that, okay? Because things don't always work out that way, right? So for instance, coming as a student, not staying full time in a semester, we see this, right? It actually nullifies your post-grad work permit. So what do you do then, right? Geez, I wish I knew that, right? Because the post-grad was part of the issue or part of the plan. Okay, alternate solutions and options. Again, I don't think recently what we've seen, I don't think it's possible to plan for all of this stuff anyways, because, we saw a lot of things happen. But I can tell you one thing, one of the things that I've been thankful with and the people that I've worked with and been able to interact with, I'm really thankful that we've had the ability to guide most everybody through this, and we're still doing it because we understand the situation. We can give them the direction that they need to be able to move through that. And again, that's all you can do. That's all you can do. But you got to know what those are. And the immigration department, what we're seeing now, for instance, is moving hard and fast with different changes and exemptions, and things are changing. And it was pretty, in the beginning, it was pretty much, it's a word I'm looking for. Like things were changing by the day, which was really interesting, let's say. Things have settled down a little bit now. And as a side note, I've been very happy with how things have been handled on the immigration department side. I was really impressed because normally, I can be critical where it's needed, but all in all, we've fared okay in Canada here. I'm pretty proud of how things have been handled. Okay, but we'll see. So this is my last slide that I usually end off with. What I like to tell people is that Again, you got to think strategically. You got to plan from the beginning, and this is where your success is going to come from. Okay. Everybody can come to Canada. Okay. If you meet the qualifications, like things like language and education, right? But if you have all of those minimum qualifications, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to get here. It's lack of plan and lack of strategy where people get screwed up. And there's nothing worse for me than seeing that. It's really, really devastating when you see somebody in that situation. And again, I don't want to end off on that, but it all could have been avoided if people just planned a little bit. And that's what I see. And that was the focus for today. I really, really wanted to take the time to kind of hit that home, because I think that a lot of people could save themselves a lot of issues if they just focus on those things. Okay, so I'm pretty much done on that. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to put up something here for you. And if anybody has any questions, if you ever want to book a consultation with us, or you ever want to get in touch with us, by all means, please do reach out. I'll just put up the information there for us, so you can reach out to us. I'm going to leave it at that. If you have any questions or concerns, just reach out to us, and be more than happy to help where we can. But again, please, please, please do a few things. If you want 3 things from today, ask yourself why you want to come to Canada, have a plan, okay, and make sure that you understand all of your options and strategically go. And don't be afraid to ask for help. We all need help. And again, we're not here to take you, push you into something. But if you need a guide and you want that pathway, so you understand what the map is, so that you can get there, then by all means, please reach out. Okay. I hope everybody's staying safe, and I definitely look forward to speaking with you soon. Thank you again. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching my I Want to Come to Canada video, and hopefully you have a better understanding of what your next steps should be. If you like the content in this masterclass, please hit the subscribe button. We'll see you in the next video.